Hi, I'm Rick Yvanovich. I'm the founder and CEO of TRG International. I'm here on this podcast with Prosper to share with you business as unusual. So you'll be hearing some unusual things and what it means to be embracing change and be that architect of change.
Now, welcome to yet another exciting episode of the Online Prosperity Show, your premium destination for exclusive insights into the journeys of today's most inspiring entrepreneurs and thought leaders. I'm your host, Prosper Taruvinga, and today we're going to be diving into a story that's anything but ordinary. Now, I want you to imagine retiring only to be pulled back in business. And that's within the first week of your retirement. And that's what our guest had to go through when he turned an unexpected opportunity into a global enterprise. Now, Rick, how are you doing, my man?
I'm doing well, Prosper. And thanks for having me on your show. Now, before we start and you start peppering me with some really difficult questions, I'd like to share a core belief that I hold dear.
Yes.
We all have the potential to be architects of change. In this world, this crazy world that we all happen to live in, of constant transformation, our task isn't just to keep up, it's to shape the path forward. Every day, our actions, whether they're big or small, they shape our future. And as we discuss stuff today, Prosper, I want everybody listening to remember this. You are your brand, and every single decision you make is part of the unique story that you're crafting. How you react, how you adapt, and how you innovate in the face of all this craziness that we're facing at the moment will define your story and your legacy. So as we dive into our conversation today, let's not just think about adapting to change, but about how we can define it. As we're not just participants, we're catalysts in this ever-changing business as unusual world. So let's get started, Prosper.
Absolutely. I love that. We could actually just end the episode right there, Rick, because you've really defined the essence of what is missing in a lot of people. People are waiting for somebody to show up, knock on their house's door and say, hey, it's your turn to lead. So I'm hoping this video is going to be one of those tap on the shoulders and say, you've been warned, you've been served. And I can't wait to jump into this one, Rick. So thank you so much. And you might be wondering, who's Rick and why should I care? Well, I'll give you a hint. Just Google him. Rick Yvanovich is the only one with a name like that. So whatever you're going to find on Google, you're definitely going to be impressed. Okay. He's a master coach and very unique individual. And he's the brains behind TRG International. So obviously all his life stories, his learnings and things that he has done have been all put together into his life work there. So his journey from supermarkets to now founding a multi-million-dollar company that's serving clients in over 80 countries is just a testament to the resilience and adaptability that he has learned to work with. And he's also written a book, Business as Unusual, that we're going to be talking about. It actually offers a roadmap for thriving in today's ever-changing landscape. And I can't wait to jump into that. And it's been translated into different languages, hasn't it, Rick? How many languages so far?
English and Vietnamese. It's just come out in Vietnamese.
Absolutely. See now, so I want you to grab your favorite beverage, settle in, and just prepare to be inspired, because if Rick's story resonates with you, I also want you to just drop a version of your own story in the comments so that we know that you are ready to embrace the unusual. Now, Rick, I mean, we could go on and on. You've already, really hinted into the kind of person that you are, the person that has is that the word? Has actually created his own sort of destiny. But your story began in supermarkets and breweries. How did these early experiences now shape your approach to business and leadership?
Ooh, that's going back a long time, Prosper. Many, many decades. So when I was a young lad, and I did what some people did in school, which is fail those exams at the end, the ones you were really supposed to pass. Which means that sort of usual track going into university was a closed door. That's why I ended up taking a job in a local supermarket stacking shelves. It wasn't that bad. It was a management trainee position. This was in the UK. Obviously, I have a British accent here. And working for a supermarket chain called Sainsbury's. And it was a management trainee program that was supposed to train me to be a manager or something. I did that for a while, for nearly a year, but I realized I felt a little bit brain dead. I am a numbers person, and I don't know why, I don't know when, and I don't know what triggered it. But sometime whilst I was stacking a shelf or I was butchering meat or whatever I was doing in the supermarket, I suddenly decided I want to use my brain because I'm a numbers person, and I want to become an accountant. Okay, so no laughing, anyone. Some people actually want to be accountants. I did. So I quit, went to accounting school, got through that, and then I started job hopping my way up the accounting career ladder. I was studying for my professional exams. I tried all sorts of things. I tried night school. I tried distance learning, which was the worst because those days is you wrote things by hand and you posted them and they were marked and then they came back. None of this internet stuff. And eventually did some weekend training. It took me 5 years to get to pass my professional accounting exams. In that time, I'd hopped through many jobs. I went into the profession, hated it within the first week, switched to breweries, which was far better. I mean, imagine it, how old was I then? I reckon I was around 20 or something, and you're working for a brewery and, you go down to the canteen where lunch is free and so is the beer. I mean, this is crazy. Only job I ever had ever like that. I don't think they do that these days. But anyway, so worked my way through that, worked my way into defense electronics where we make things go bang, and wasn't just electronics. Worked in real estate and then moved to big oil, and then they moved me to Vietnam. No, sorry, wrong. They moved me to China and then they dragged me down to Vietnam, where I've been pretty much for the last 35 years, although I relocated last year, which is why I'm now sitting in Switzerland.
Absolutely, absolutely. So not only have you switched geographically, you've also switched interdisciplinary, so there's a lot of experience that would have emanated from all of these things that you would have done. Now, it took you 5 years to become an accountant, but it took you 1 week for you to decide this is not what I wanted to do. You couldn't have realized that in the 5 years that you were trying to do this.
No. I wanted to become an accountant. I realized I wanted to, well, I knew I didn't want to be continue working in a supermarket, and you know, the the sort of subjects you know, did A levels in was double maths and physics, which gives you an indication of the way my brain works. I just didn't do particularly well in the finals. So I went back to my numbers roots and accounting. You know, I like being an accountant. I love being an accountant.
Absolutely. And obviously, back in that time, you did mention that, the way that you were studying, you would have to write things on a paper, post it back in again, and then
Yeah.
come back. And
Hmm.
there were so many opportunities for you to quit, but you still didn't.
No, I didn't because you know, I didn't have a degree, so the thing that I needed was a professional qualification. Okay, one could say I have a bit of a chip on my shoulder, not ever getting into university,
Mm,
which is probably why I got 57 million letters after my name, just to prove that I'm not as daft as I think I am.
absolutely. Now, obviously, in the time that you're talking about, having some sort of a school grade would then mean your life was set and things like that. What was that like for you, having failed the actual exams and then having be sort of relegated to stocking shelves in a supermarket?
I guess for the generation that I was brought up in, I'm a baby boomer. It's, you know, when you're at school, you've got to work hard and study hard. You've got to get the good grades. You go to university. You've got to get yourself a good degree, and then you'll get your a good job for life, and you're set. You know, that's the mantra. So, in order to play that game, you know, you've got to pass the tests.
Mm,
you've you've got to get the grades, and the flip side of that is if you don't, then I guess you're a bit of a failure, or you're not very good, or you're not good enough. So I've always had that feeling, well, I wasn't good enough to go there. I wasn't good enough to get into university, so I'm not good enough. Okay. So, you know, I'm not trying to sort of put down work in a supermarket because it was actually a really fun, wonderful experience. And although at the time, it didn't resonate with me.
yeah.
As Steve Jobs says, is, you know, you can only connect the dots looking backwards. When I look at every single one of my job experiences, it doesn't matter who I work for and how long I work for them. I've used what I've learned in every single one of them since I've been running my companies.
Mm,
It's proved absolutely invaluable. Okay.
absolutely. And thank you so much for clarifying that. Now, one of the dots looking for backwards that you would have had to experience was your stint in China and in Vietnam. Now, what was that time like for you? First of all, being in a foreign country, and what sort of roles were you doing in that particular region?
Well, at that time I was working for Big Oil, and I was sent to China to do a little bit of sort of forensic accounting. Um, they hadn't had a finance manager for some years. They'd moved the office around multiple times, and there was a tax audit coming up that was going to look back at maybe a decade's worth or more of information. And so they thought, oh, send Rick out, he'll sort it out. And that was my first exposure to working in the Far East, to working in another land, to working in a very, 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 to me, unusual environment, which was China.
Mm,
So apart from the work, let's put that aside. But we're talking January 1990. Okay. and Tiananmen Square had only just happened, in the near past.
Mm.
And I remember going to Tiananmen Square, and there's nobody there. Now, I've since been to Beijing multiple times, and you can't get anywhere near it because there are 10 million billion people in the way. But imagine being in a city, Beijing, and the streets are deserted. There's literally no one around. So whilst I was there was no one around. It was sort of, it wasn't spooky. It was just very, very strange that for such a massive country, such a massive city, there's just no people around. Okay. And that had a very interesting feeling. But it also meant if you want to do the touristic things, like go and see anything, there are no crowds, there are no queues. It was wonderful. So that was, I'd say, a rush to the senses. And I thought, I need to get out of London. Although London is a lot of fun, this is so much more exotic. This is so much more exciting. The work that I was doing was so much more challenging. I thought, I want to be here. And I was flying to and fro multiple times. And then I was offered a job. Do I want to stay and be the finance manager? And I said yes.
Oh, wow. That must have been interesting. Now, Rick,
But
obviously,
then that didn't happen.
oh,
I was asked to pop down to Vietnam on the way back of one trip. So I did. Little did I know that I was popping down to help them with an issue, and their real intent was to check me out so they could offer me a job. And so my China job got thrown away, and I was now in Vietnam.
wow.
And I did not want to be there. Okay, because I thought it's very, very, very different from China, and I wanted to be in China. But anyway, they placed me in Vietnam, and that was back in 1990. So I've literally been there for the last 35 years. Although, as I mentioned last year, I've just relocated to Switzerland, so it's only 34.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for opening that up. Now, your stint in China, like you said, it was forensic accounting for you to, unearth whatever was happening in the previous 10 years so that they are ready for an audit. That would have ruffled a few feathers of the people that were maybe wanting to let a few things slide, or whatever it is that they were afraid was going to be unearthed, because you're literally somebody coming from a different country and you're showing up asking them questions. What was that like?
Interesting. I mean, I am infinitely curious, so I have a job to do, so I need to do it. There's nothing to hide there. I felt sorry for the team, the accounting team on the ground there, because they haven't had a sort of a finance manager, CFO for years, because of the level of activity, and they were faced with the pressure of an audit coming up. They don't want their neck on the line because they're all national staff. So yeah, it's convenient for someone from head office to come along because it's going to be his fault if things go wrong. So I'm there to help them. So they were being very, very, very helpful. Obviously, they had to come along and translate with the authorities because I couldn't speak Chinese and they were not going to speak English. And yeah, it was really, really interesting to try and find all the information. Where was it? Oh, it's stored here, in different cities. So we were flying around trying to find all the data. I remember going into one warehouse that had water damage and opening some of the filing cabinets, those metal filing cabinets or the metal cabinets, and opening them, and like it's just covered in mold and all the records are collapsing. And oh wow, this is going to be a little bit tricky. So then as soon as forensics, so I had to go out and find out elsewhere in the organization who's been around for the last however many years it needed to be. Where's that data? Do they have a hard copy somewhere else? Do they have a computer backup somewhere else? Remember, this is only 1990, you know, not everybody had computers in those days. So trying to track down this information was challenging, but we did it.
I like that. I like that. And Vietnam, you didn't want to be there, but 35 years later, you've got a story to tell.
Yeah, I didn't want to be there because I was having fun up in China. You know, the work was really fun. I'd connected very well with the team. You know, not just the accounting team, but you know the GM there and the other staff. I'd begun to meet some people. You know, it was really nice, and you know, and seeing things like, you know, the Great Wall, and you know, all sorts of other touristic places. It was wonderful. And then being dragged down to Vietnam, which is at the time to me seemed like in the dark ages, and we were living above the office, and everything was not the same. It was not the same.
Oh, absolutely.
And the job was potentially even harder because, okay, this is what we got. We're sort of living out of a shoebox, you know, which is called our office, and so you live and breathe in the office, and yeah, it was going to be tough. But I did it anyway, and it ended up being a fun ride.
Absolutely. Love that. And then obviously you came back. If you can connect.
No, I didn't come back. I did not come back. After about 4 years in '94, they said it is. You know, I moved around different parts of this big oil company, from upstream to downstream and other parts, and they said it's time for you to go back home to head office. And I thought, this is ominous. Oil price was around $15 at the time, and still going south of that, which is, you know, most people listening have never heard of that. That was in the dark ages, right? And I hadn't met any of my bosses. I'd been out in Vietnam for 4 years, and I probably had more than 4 bosses in London that I'd never met. So I thought, if I get on that plane and go back, there's probably no job there. And then I fortunately found out there's a voluntary redundancy program.
All right.
So I put my hand up, took it on my expat salary, and basically that was it. I retired.
Oh, wow. Okay. And pretty much that retirement didn't last long.
No, it didn't, because I'm a workaholic, and I thought, this is really boring. What am I supposed to do now? What am I supposed to do? Like, what? No work? This is really, really boring. Now, I forgot to mention the type of accountant I am. I am a management accountant, but I'm also a systems accountant. So for many years, I've been playing with accounting systems, computer systems, and even though, you know, I left school in 1980, the same year that the computer came out, it wasn't until the second job that I had in accounting that they actually had a PC. And ever since then, I've been getting more and more into it. So one of the things I had been doing is, when I was in China, I set up an accounting system, accounting software for them, an accounting sort of ERP for them. And I had done exactly the same thing in Vietnam for the company I was working for. And by accident, I had done it for about, 3 or 4 other international oil companies for fun over the weekend. Because they used to ask me, Rick, how are you doing the accounting and I'd hold up some floppy disks or whatever, floppy disks in those days. And this is the accounting program I'm using. And they'd come back a few months later and says, Rick, I have all these floppy disks. What do I do with them? And I'd say, all right, buy me a few beers over the weekend and I'll set it up for you. Okay. So when the vendor heard that I was quitting, they said, would I like to become a distributor for this product? I didn't understand that really. So I said, like, tell me more. This is, well, Rick, you put it into the company you're working at and you put it into all these other oil companies. We know it was all you. So just carry on doing it, but get paid. I thought, all right then. So I signed and I contacted all my friends who are the finance managers and CFOs of all the other international oil companies. And I said, okay, this is what I'm doing now. You know that system I set up for you, can I now support you? Can I give you some services? And they all said, yes, of course. So I started servicing them, and then word got round and I did the rest of the oil companies. And then the thing with oil exploration is you get moved every few years. So I get a phone call and say, hey, Rick, it's whoever it is, Joe. I'm now in wherever I am in the world. Can you come over and do that accounting system again? And I go, yeah, sure. I'll get on a plane.
Oh, wow.
So I started following all my friends around the world implementing these systems. And then word got around and they referred it to other people. And I went to other countries and it just grew and grew and grew.
Great. Now, this is TRG International we're talking about, right?
Yeah, we've been doing that for 31 years now.
Fantastic. Now, did you, in between this, because the only sort of training that you spoke about was the accounting training that you took 5 years to accomplish. Did you receive any formal training in maybe leadership, entrepreneurship that would have helped you to navigate the challenges that come with starting and operating a now seemingly global company?
Since I started on this entrepreneurial thing, I didn't even know it was called entrepreneurial because 30 years ago, I guess you didn't really talk about that.
No.
B, no. No. So did I, whilst I was doing all this, hey, I need to go and get trained on how to manage or lead or how to do sales or marketing or anything else? No, it never crossed my mind. I just did it, which means I made a few mistakes, or rather a lot of mistakes. But at the end of the day, you have to iterate very, very fast. And if you fall down, you just stand up and keep on going. I read a lot, so I started reading on how to do stuff and trying to work things out. But also it was, my style of selling, shall we say, even though I didn't know it was a style, it just seemed the natural thing to do, is a consultative style, because I'm selling to accountants as an accountant. So I know what their problems are, so I can speak to them very, very simply. I can very resonate with them. And, they trust me because I know exactly what they are talking about because I've experienced the same problem and I just happen to have a solution. Okay. Now, I mentioned that all the other roles that I had before, suddenly connecting the dots, they all meant something. They all meant something. So, for example, I worked in a supermarket, which is really convenient when I started selling to supermarkets.
Right.
Okay. I worked in a brewery, which was really convenient when I started selling to breweries. I worked in manufacturing, which is really convenient when I started selling into manufacturing. And I worked in oil. Obviously, I sold into oil. So I'd worked in a lot of the industries that I sold into. So there's, again, good rapport, good level of trust there. But the other thing is going back to that very, very first job, which working in the supermarket. What were they really trying to teach me? They were trying to teach me how to manage people. And I didn't realize that. They were teaching me how to manage people. So maybe I was ignoring it because it was all very on the job training. It wasn't sit down in a classroom. It was on the job training. Like, how do you deal with the people in your department? Hey, if I'm doing a night shift, in the grocery department in the supermarket, I'm the person locking up the place. I'm the person who has to manage the 24 people who are stacking the shelves, and these people are older than my parents. How am I managing that? How am I dealing with these people? All these very, very different people. How am I dealing with those 16-year-old kids who work on a half day on a Saturday for a bit of pocket money? Rowdy kids. How am I dealing with them when I'm only 18 years old? You learn stuff that isn't in the, just through doing things. And that's always stuck with me. So now here's a real company. I have to deal with people. Yeah, I just deal with them. What's the problem? Now, the things that I didn't know, I know accounting. I don't understand sales. I don't understand marketing. I don't understand all these other things. I just had to do them. Through trial and error. That's it.
And I quite like how you said, you're learning all the way, how to deal with people and everything else that comes along with it. And one of the things that you mentioned was you obviously love reading and, getting information from that. You've gone on and written a book yourself, Business as Unusual, and it really emphasizes the thriving of a new renaissance. Can you maybe share a few key principles from the book that the listeners can actually start applying as soon as they get their hands on it?
Okay. Well, what it was is, that was born during the COVID pandemic, when we were in severe lockdown. I started writing a book because you couldn't do much else. Like, what else do you do? So one of the things I found out during the pandemic, it was so unusual, and the networks that I was in, they're all business networks, senior people. So, could be accountants, could be CEOs, could be general managers, whoever they are. They're leading teams, and we'd speak to each other, and they're all asking, like, what should we do? What are you doing? How are you handling this? How are you handling that? Because there's no playbook for any of this. There isn't one, is there? I kept hearing that when this is over and we get back to business as usual, and that drove me up the wall, because I thought, you've got to be nuts if you think this is going to be over and it all goes back to the way it was. That's crazy. That ain't going to happen. Business is just unusual. That's where the business as unusual came from. And as I saw in Vietnam, because I was locked down in Vietnam, and across the world, industries, especially tourism, getting absolutely, smashed, people losing their jobs, companies going bankrupt. It was awful, wasn't it? I, again, came across a lot of people because, one of our big verticals at the time was hospitality. We did a lot of business with hotels, which is why we're in so many countries, because we do hotel chains. And speaking to some of those people who had lost their jobs, they spent 20 years of their career in there, and then they just let go, and they felt so lost, really lost. And more people were lost. And that's at one end of the spectrum. The other end of the spectrum is at the time, my daughter was about to graduate, or she was in her last year or something of university, and like all universities struggling to go online, and that didn't go so well for a semester or two, did it? But I was asking them, how does she feel? How do her friends feel? And she was saying, yeah, a lot of my friends, were very, very scared because we can't get an internship because, you can't go into the office and no one's offering an internship. So, they were actually really frightened as well. So, everybody was a little bit stuck. So what I decided with the book is I'm going to write this book to help people get unstuck. How to get unstuck. And in order to get unstuck is I need to give them some kind of pathway to follow, because the sort of the analogy is pre-pandemic, we commuted too long to work. We got into work, we sat in our little cube, jumped on our little hamster wheel, and it paid the mortgage, right? And then pandemic came along and they threw away our hamster wheel, they threw away our cube, they probably threw the office away as well and say, go work at home or don't work at all. Not good. So people like when the pandemic was supposedly over after a couple of years and people trickled back into work, we had the great resignation, we had the great reshuffle, we had the great whatever you want to call it. And I feel that this was, people were not happy going back. Either they didn't like what they were going back to or realize what they were going back to, which was the same as they had before. They didn't actually like it in the first place. And so people started voting with their feet, because the grass is always greener. So they were going in search of something, but they didn't actually know what it was. Okay. And so we're still having this to and fro, aren't we? It's still a little bit not there. So the point of the book was to help give people a framework that they could follow to try and put some direction and purpose back into their life. Okay. And to take charge of it, be that architect. So why an architect? Well, the analogy I use in the book is a castle. So even if you, Prosper, imagine a castle, and I can see you imagining one now, it has towers, it has walls, it has different buildings in it. But we can all imagine our castle in any shape or form that we want. So in the analogy in the book, I have a number of buildings, and each building has a specific purpose, okay, or has a specific use. And these are all different aspects of our lives. So when I say we're architects, each day we're basically placing a brick and building our castle, okay, in the shape or form that we want. But we have to consciously have an intent of, where are we going to lay this brick? Are we going to put it on this tower to make that bigger, wider, stronger, or whatever? Or are we going to place it in this building? Okay. And as I said, each building has a purpose. So, for example, in the middle of the castle, there are 4 towers. One of them is called the Tower of Self, which is all about the 4 selves, okay, which is self-confidence, self-efficacy, self-worth or value, and self-motivation. Okay. Another one is the Tower of the Mind, and that's all about Kaizen, which my interpretation of that is continuous lifelong learning. How we show up, which is a nice way of saying emotionally intelligent. We have another tower called the Tower of Life Force. That's the spark in us that keeps us alive, gives us energy. And we look after our herbs, our health, our energy, our rest, our balance, and our stress. And another tower is the Tower of Purpose. What is our purpose? What is our life purpose? What are our goals? What's our legacy going to be? They're just 4 buildings. There are a bunch of others. And so, therefore, for someone who feels a little bit lost, not sure what to do, is, let's have a look at our castle and let's construct it. Okay, let's evaluate what our buildings are like. Let's evaluate all of these different aspects of our life. Where are we today? But where do we want to be in the future tomorrow? Okay. And how are we going to get from today to that future? Now, we have to make a choice because we can't do it all at the same time. And there's where the intent goes. Where are we going to focus our attention? Are we going to put it over here and say, build our self-confidence? Or are we going to put it over there and focus more on our health?
I like that. And the nice thing I like about castles is they have a moat around them, and I'm supposing the moat is a lot of work that needs to pull it all together and ensure that there's that. Now, you did raise an interesting point that people were coming to you and asking, what should we do now, especially during the pandemic and things of that nature. And you've worked across various industries and countries. I'm supposing the people that were asking you these questions had never left maybe their own postcode. They had never experienced something that hard or traumatic like we had to experience during that time. Now, do you think your diverse experiences in all these other places you've been, in all these countries you've been now, sort of gave you a platform or a castle, for you to be the one that is helping other people dealing with what was going on, because so many people just didn't know where to begin?
Possibly. I can't say it does or it can't say it doesn't because I I don't know how it would feel if I didn't have that experience. It's just me. It just sort of, I've experienced it, so it's just one of those memories or thoughts or things I know we should do or shouldn't do because I've just experienced it and learnt it. Maybe it does put me in a unique position. Some of the people I'm speaking to have never left their country. Okay. Other people have been traveling around or are expatriates. Is it harder for the expatriate? Yeah, possibly. It's harder for the expatriate if they're in a different country and they've just lost their job. That is a lot tougher because depending on the country, maybe they have no right to remain there anymore. Because if they lose their job, the job was giving them maybe the work permit, and the work permit was giving them the right to stay. They lose that, and they better find a job quickly, or they have to leave, which means they might have to go back home. So that's also a difficult decision to make. But going back to your question, does my my experience of working in all these different countries give me a different skill? Yeah, I think it does. I think it does.
Absolutely. No, you also have a TEDx talk where you're discussing moving from the usual to the unusual, which for so many people have not had that sort of transition. What does this transition mean to you personally and professionally, moving from the usual to the unusual? Because so many people don't like change. So many people just want, like you said, getting back to the way things were, only to find out that the jobs that they were holding dearly to, that were deemed non-essential. And I'm speaking from Melbourne here, 2 years, nobody needed what they are now going back to do. So what is this sort of, does it have any sort of, that transition, does it mean anything personally to you?
Yes, it does. I mean, the TEDx talk, there were several things in there. One of them is something that we spoke about right at the beginning, which is that the generation that I was in, or the way that I was brought up, is you had to achieve. Yeah. You take a test or an exam or whatever. If you got a C, you're told by everybody, hey, that was okay, but you got to try harder to get an A. If you got a B, they say, yeah, that was good, but you've got to try even harder to get an A. And then when you did get that A, they'd say, well, an A is good, but you've got to work even harder to keep on getting A's. So it really doesn't matter what you do. You're expected to achieve more and more and more and more. And so therefore, I got into that mindset is I need to achieve, even though I didn't realize it. I've been programmed to achieve, okay, for the sake of achieving. All right. Don't know why. It was an expectation. So everything I do, I need to achieve and not fail. And I realized whilst I was doing the TED talk, whilst I was trying to write it took me about, 3-6 months or whatever, is I thought, I've been conned. A bit conned, really, because it's a bit silly to be that hyperachiever all the time, because even when you achieve it, you feel absolutely nothing. Okay. Now, on the other hand, it's got me to where I was and got the company to survive for 31 years. So, it can't have all been bad. But this achieving is a little bit crazy. So I started looking at something else, which is looking for balance and looking for fulfillment. So again, there's the castle again. Let's build a balanced castle, not a wonky, a castle that's clearly out of shape. So that was one thing. But going back to your question, moving from the usual to the unusual, well, the pandemic it was definitely not usual. It was very unusual, but it wasn't isolated. Even though the pandemic was over, all sorts of things have happened subsequent to that. And so therefore, the rate of change has not changed. If anything, it seems to be moving faster. Now, if we look at something like generative AI, ChatGPT, that came out, 2.5 years ago?
Yep.
There's still some people who haven't got into it. There are still some people waiting to be told what to do. You mentioned this before. They're still waiting after 2 years. And yet people who've got into that have moved even further than that, and there are new models coming out from OpenAI and all the other competitors, and there are thousands of them these days. They're coming out literally every week, every month, okay? And the disruption that is already being felt in jobs, it's already beginning, okay? And it's not just generative AI and, hey, it's only been here for 2 years. This has been building for years, okay? It's just manifesting itself now into, okay, here's some tools that literally anybody can use for free or for not very much, okay? And it's only a matter of a very short time where we're going to see even more disruption, okay? As AI is being used more and more in certain disciplines, and it means that you don't need so many people to do the job anymore. I mean, I read an article the other day where a startup has replaced their CEO with an AI. So an AI, this artificial intelligence is actually the CEO of the company. All right. And there's, more and more talk in the press, depending on what you read, of, these agents coming more and more into jobs. And it's only a matter of very short time, maybe, a handful of years, where we're going to get used to maybe one of our colleagues is an AI. The role is fulfilled completely by an AI. That's where we're going. If when that starts happening, what are the rest of us? What are humans going to do? If you take something like marketing, which is one of the roles that it could be is going to be heavily affected by AI.
Doubt. No
Does
doubt.
that mean half the people aren't required? I saw a YouTube video with Barack Obama over the weekend, and he was saying something like, hey, AI can now code 60 to 70% better than most coders,
Yep.
because not all coders are great, let's be honest. So what are those 60 to 70% going to do?
Absolutely. And you're not wrong about that. It's the way it's moving, it's super, super fast. People like myself have to literally sleep with one eye open just to see what new app or or agent has come to take my job. But for those that are watching right now and they're quite hesitant to embrace change, what sort of steps would you maybe tell them or advise them to take in order to start their own unusual journey?
Well, the other thing I am a coach. Okay.
Right.
When we look at coaching, when we even look at learning, real growth happens beyond our comfort zone. Now, if we all think of sport or doing exercise, if you're young and still at school and maybe want to play in the school team or are playing in the school team, your coach is pushing you hard to get bigger, stronger, faster, or whatever you are, more agile, whatever, okay, to play better. All right. Us older folks, yeah, we're encouraged to do exercise, walk, go to the gym or whatever. But in order to build muscle, to get better, you got to tear muscle. It hurts. Okay. You've got to put the work in. And so if you're just staying in your comfort zone, you're not moving. You're not growing. You know that you're growing when you're feeling uncomfortable about things. Now, what change is doing, it's maybe forcing us, or it's creating circumstances which we need to change. We need to change. Take yourself, Prosper. Okay, we were talking about marketing before. If you refuse to change and carry on doing what you're doing forever, you're not going to last for very long. You will get disrupted.
That is true.
Which is one option. Okay. Or you choose to feel uncomfortable, keep one eye open all the time, look for what's happening, find a new app and, says, maybe I don't like it, but I can see it's going in that direction. I need to change. I need to start doing that. I need to start embracing that. That's growing, and so we've got to keep on growing. So again, going back to the castle, you've got one brick, you've got to lay it every day. How are you going to lay that brick? How are you going to grow yourself? Or are you literally just going to throw it away and not grow at all? Yeah. We have to keep on learning. So the key thing these days is to keep on learning, because whatever we know today is going to be out of date within a year. Everything that we thought we knew about business, that has been completely disrupted by a generative AI that's come in, which is forcing us to rethink how we do things. Because if you have a company and you're not embracing AI and you're not going to change anything, then you are at a risk that your competitors do embrace it and can start doing things far more productively and efficiently than you because they're using AI. Okay. Then you're going to get left behind. So on all these changes, we have to embrace them. So rather than just waiting to react to see what's going to happen, why don't we just jump in at the deep end and give it a go and see what happens? So I'm saying to embrace the unusual, embrace the change. Don't just wait for it to happen.
Absolutely. And you did mention, you do offer a bit of coaching and, helping people with their journeys. What can people expect when they reach out and work with you?
It really depends what they want to achieve. I like moving people from A to B. That's a simple way of doing it because they're stuck in A and they want to get to B and they can't get there. I will help them get there. That's the easiest way of looking at a lot of what I do. Another one is if some people really unsure of what to do, maybe feeling a bit lost, they don't have any purpose, I can help them find their purpose and get clarity on what their purpose is. And once they have that, then they're off. Because I think it's very, very important to have that purpose. That purpose is like the direction that you are going in. Because if you don't know what direction am I supposed to go in, then what direction are you supposed to go in? As Alice said to the cat, in Alice in Wonderland, which way should I go? And the cat says it really depends where you want to go. And Alice says, well, I'm not sure where I want to go. So the answer is, well, it doesn't really matter where you go because you're not going to go anywhere. And it's a little bit like that. Do people feel a bit unbalanced? Do people feel a bit off because they don't have clarity on what they're supposed to be doing? They don't have clarity in the direction they should be going. Contrast that to I have a clarity in what my purpose is. And because that is my purpose, these are my goals. And because those are my goals, this is what I need to do.
Absolutely.
So it's that alignment that is important, okay, underscored by your core values, of course. So it's an alignment of your core values with your goals, with your life purpose, that you will feel better balance, you will get better clarity, and you'll feel more fulfilled.
Absolutely. And what would be the easiest entry point into, maybe looking to start working with you? Is it through the book, or do you have places on the internet where they can go?
Best place is to go to my website, which is my name, rickyvanovich.com. Or as you said before, just Google me. And I'd like to say I have fantastic at SEO, but no, I just have a unique name. So if you go to my website, there's all sorts of stuff. You can contact me through the website. You can, there are some offers there as well about things. Yes, you can go read the book if you want as well.
I'll make sure.
And if you read the book, there are some Easter eggs in there. So there's some freebies in there as well.
Great stuff. I'll make sure that all those links are in the show notes there, Rick, so that people can obviously start finding their way. Now, Rick, I can't thank you enough for the time that we spent today. I mean, your life story and your experience have so much value for anybody that is really looking to start their own unusual journey. So many people have been brought up in a world that, as you have said, no longer exists. You know what I mean? Pre-pandemic, there was a whole different world. Now it's a whole different world that is now punctuated by so much change that you literally have to be paddling in order to just stand still. Now, you introduced us to young Rick, who obviously was not successful in, the tests that were put out at that particular time. And obviously you felt like a failure then just because of the environment and how people sort of, viewed that particular part of your journey. If you could get a moment to speak to somebody who's going through maybe something like what you went through at that particular time, knowing what you now know about life and having connected the dots, like you said, what would you say to that young fellow who now is trying to overachieve in order for them to get by in life and start their own unusual journey?
I'd say don't listen to the other people. You are you. You are unique. The only person who can call, say you're a failure as yourself. Okay. However, what you think and what you believe is what you can become. So if you think you're a failure, you could manifest that. So that is not a good thing to manifest. My story is, I guess, all about, it's irrelevant if you didn't pass the tests when you needed to do them. There are other paths. Okay, so it's, we have to play with the cards that life has dealt us. Okay, there is learning in everything that we do. So in failure, there is one hell of a lot of learning. I mean, I seem to know a lot today, and maybe my entrepreneurial journey, a lot of it has been successful because I failed so much. Because success is on the other side of failure. So it's when you do trip up and fall flat in your face, it's your ability to stand up again and keep going. All right. And to learn from what tripped you up. Okay. So as I said, I know how to do accounting. I didn't know how to do any of the other things. Okay. And if I found I was doing something else and I kept falling flat on my face, it was obviously doing the wrong thing. I had to find a different way. So you just iterate and try something else, and you eventually work it out. So again, to young folks starting out, it really doesn't matter if you didn't pass the exam and get into university. I could argue that you can learn a lot without going to university. Okay. And there's nothing stopping you from doing a degree later when you're mature. I mean, I ended up doing a master's about 10 years ago or something, sort of 30 years after I should have done it, gone to university in the first place. It's all doable. It's all doable. So don't put yourself down. It's just a temporary setback. What have you learned from it? Okay. If you were to do it again, what would you change? Okay. And what's your destination? What's one step you can take today?
Absolutely. Just one step. Absolutely.
One step.
I love that so much. Because so many people try and complicate things. They try and become everything, and it just makes a big mess of it. Now, Rick, I mean, obviously you've taken us way back to the shelf stalking days to now when you're on top of your game. But what's next? What can we expect moving forward now that you've invited us into your world?
What's next? Good question. Good question. Good question. I have realized I do like generating content. I do like writing. So there are, more books in the pipeline. When I wrote this first book, I said it was the first in a trilogy. Okay. But I haven't written I haven't even started the other two yet. So I'm well behind that. And I need to see what's holding me back from starting, the rest of the trilogy. Maybe because I haven't quite worked it out yet on what the solution's going to be. So I've said what I was going to write about, but I need to provide a solution for it. Okay. And I'm not convinced about it yet. What I think I will be doing, I will be releasing some shorter books. I'll probably, there is one thought, I'll do one a quarter. I do have a weekly newsletter, which is usually for sort of mid-level manager leaders, but it's also useful to anyone aspiring to get up that ladder. And I usually deal with a problem or challenge that one is usually faced with, and I give a very quick solution, usually driven by an acronym, so it helps you remember what to do. I think I've done about 70 of them so far. And there's enough there to start writing some books around it where I can expand further on those acronyms and on those actions that you can do to overcome whatever that situation is. So from me, you're going to see a lot more written content that I will publish. I have a podcast that is due to start. That was on my to-do list for this year. That might be delayed. So later in the year, I intend to start my own branded podcast, as opposed to the one that I do for my company, which is a slightly different one.
Absolutely. Now, Rick, I can't thank you enough for obviously sharing your incredible journey and insights with us today. I mean, the journey that you took, and I viscerally believe in life. We're here to live, to learn, and to contribute. And in order for you to be able to live that life, you need to have learned all the lessons, and you definitely have done that. And now you're on the phase of contribution, which is you sending the elevator down to help those that are going to be looking for their own unusual thing. And so thank you so much for, first of all, having gone through that journey, and second of all, showcasing it all today on the Online Prosperity Show.
Thank you, Prosper. And as we close, I just want to leave everybody with a final thought. Remember, we're not just a participant in this ever-changing world, but you're architects shaping the course of your lives, your careers, and the world around you. So I encourage you all to embrace change and define it rather than just adapt and react to it. Be that catalyst in your own business as unusual world, because the transformation starts with you. And I'm eager to hear about your journeys. So go build the castle. Prosper, thank you so much for having me on your podcast. It's been a blast. I've had a lot of fun. I hope your listeners have enjoyed it as much as I have.
Well, you're going to start seeing a lot of castles popping up on the internet there, people just building their own castles. And for those that are watching right now, if today's conversation really sparked a desire for you to start embracing your own unusual in your own life, don't keep this to yourself. Share this episode with somebody who really needs a nudge in that direction so they can step out of their comfort zone. And as Rick keeps alluding to, we need to build castles, not in the air, but castles that will really fortify our passion, where we're going, and the visions that we actually have. And I want you to remember one thing, that the journey to a happier existence really starts with you. So many people just want it all without having done the work. So if you check out our next episode, we're going to be exploring ideas that can help you transform your life and business. And while you're at it, just subscribe to the Online Prosperity Show and join us as we uncover more stories that inspire and empower. Until next time, stay prosperous. Bye for now.